world didn't end in fire, it ended in silence. Every city burned, every promise collapsed, and the living built walls to keep out the truth. Now the survivors are walking a line between freedom and control, between hope and horror. They thought they escaped death at Hoover Dam, but in Phoenix, the living might be worse than the dead. The desert takes its due. The trucks tore down the cracked highway, engines howling through the endless dark. Dust and smoke swirled in their wake like ghosts chasing the living. The survivors didn't speak. There was nothing left to say after what they'd seen at the dam. Nick's hands were welded to the steering wheel, knuckles white. The image of those things flooding from the dam burned into his mind. Their numbers, their speed, the way they moved together like one living organism. They weren't just undead anymore. They were changing. Rich sat beside him, silent, reloading his shotgun with shaking hands. Ghost lay across the back seat, breathing hard. Blood, zombie blood, slicked across his fur. In the Humvee behind them, James held the radio close, cycling through frequencies. Nothing but static, no chatter, no other survivors. Just the lonely hum of an empty world. "We keep heading east," Nick said finally, breaking the silence. "If we can hit the old desert outpost, maybe what?" Rich cut in, his voice sharp. "Every maybe we chase ends with someone dead. Maybe it's time we stop running toward ghosts." Nick didn't answer. His eyes stayed locked on the road. Ahead, the desert stretched forever. Black sand, rusted wrecks, and flickers of firelight in the distance. "Those fires," James said over the radio. "You see them?" Nick nodded. "Yeah, survivors? Or worse," James replied. They slowed as they approached the flickering glow. The headlights caught movement. Figures around a campfire, not zombies. People, dozens of them, armed, ragged, staring back at the approaching vehicles. Nick lifted a hand, signaling stop. As the engines idled, a voice called out from the camp. "Turn off your lights." They hesitated. Then gunfire erupted sharp and fast. Bullets tore into the ground near the trucks. "Ambush!" James shouted. Nick hit the gas, but before they could escape, a flare shot up into the night, bright red, hissing as it burst over the desert. Shadows moved from all directions. It wasn't zombies this time, it was people. Dozens of survivors with guns, scars, and dead eyes. A woman stepped forward from the firelight, her face smeared with ash. "You brought them here," she said, voice cold. "The dam was our barrier. You opened it?" Nick froze, realizing what she meant. Behind them, far in the distance, a faint rumble echoed. The dam's collapse had unleashed more than just water. The dead were coming. Rich muttered under his breath. "We just can't catch a break, can we?" The woman raised her weapon. "You want to live? Help us fight." And as the desert began to tremble, the survivors made their choice. The Dam of the Dead. The convoy rolled to a stop at the base of Hoover Dam just as night fell. The air was dry and electric, humming with the distant whine of wind through steel. The massive concrete wall loomed ahead, half broken, its surface cracked and scarred from years of decay. What once powered cities now looked like a tomb. Nick stepped out of the truck, rifle in hand, eyes scanning the shadows. The faint sound of rushing water echoed from below, mixed with something else, groaning, uneven, and hungry. "Smells like a graveyard," Rich muttered, tightening his grip on his shotgun. Ghost growled low beside him, tail stiff, hackles raised. James climbed out of the Humvee, flashlight flicking across the road. "The signal came from here," he said. "But if anyone's still alive, they're not answering anymore." The radio hissed with static. Then, faintly, "But please, help." The voice was close this time. Too close. They moved cautiously up the service ramp, weapons drawn. The gates of the dam were open just enough for a person to slip through. Inside, the darkness swallowed them whole. The first body was fresh. Torn open, blood still slick. A soldier's uniform half shredded. James knelt beside it, recognizing the patch, Federal Rescue Unit. "They tried to hold this place," he said quietly. "Didn't go well." A loud clang echoed from the catwalk above. Everyone froze, then movement, fast and many. Shadows pouring down the stairwells like water. The flashlights caught faces, rotting, twisted, crawling over each other as they fell. "Back, back!" Nick shouted. Gunfire erupted, the sound crashing through the dam's hollow interior. Bullets sparked against steel, tearing through the swarm. Rich fired from the hip, taking down 3 before one tackled him to the ground. Ghost lunged, teeth flashing white in the dark, dragging the creature off. Nick grabbed Rich's arm, pulling him toward the exit as more came from below. James yelled into the radio. "We're compromised. Repeat, we're surrounded." Static. No response. They reached the trucks, slamming the door shut just as hands began pounding against the glass. The engines roared, headlights cutting through the dark. Nick slammed the accelerator. The truck fishtailed, smashing through a barricade of corpses. The horde spilled out from the dam entrance, hundreds of them. In the rearview mirror, the dam's lights flickered once, then went dark forever. No safe haven, just another grave. The siege of sand and bone. The ground vibrated before the dead even appeared. A low, rolling hum, like thunder buried beneath the earth. Nick stood on the ridge with the others, staring into the night. The woman with the ash-smeared face, her name was Mara, stood beside him, binoculars pressed to her eyes. "They'll be here any minute," she said. The dam's fall stirred up half the valley. "You want to live? You shoot to kill and don't stop until your clip's dry." Nick nodded, checking his rifle. "We've been doing that for months." Below them, the camp had turned into a fortress, makeshift barricades of cars, sandbags, and scrap metal forming a rough circle. Fires burned in oil drums, painting everything in flickering orange. The survivors, men, women, even a few teenagers, moved fast, loading magazines, passing ammo crates, setting traps. James barked orders from near the Humvee, setting up a mounted machine gun. Rich helped reinforce the front line, his pit bull Ghost pacing restlessly beside him. Then came the silence, the kind that always comes before a storm. A single groan echoed from the dark, then another, then 1,000 more. The first wave appeared over the ridge, a crawling tide of silhouettes against the moonlight. Torn faces, twisted limbs, eyes that burned with hunger. "Hold the line," Mara shouted. The desert exploded. Gunfire roared across the night, lighting up the sand. Zombies fell in droves, but more kept coming, fast, jerking forward on all fours, some moving almost human. The smell of rotten gunpowder mixed into something unbearable. Nick fired until the rifle clicked empty, then switched to his sidearm. A corpse lunged over the barricade, knocking him backward. He jammed the barrel under its chin and fired, the recoil spraying blood across his face. Rich was a blur, blasting anything that moved too close. Ghost leapt at the dead with feral precision, tearing through throats, dragging bodies off the wall. Then a scream, high, human. One of the teenagers was pulled from the barricade, vanishing into the swarm. "Fall back!" James yelled. "We can't hold this line!" But Mara wasn't ready to retreat. She grabbed a flare and hurled it high into the sky. "We fight here!" she roared. The flare lit the battlefield in crimson fire, revealing something that froze everyone. Zombies crawling out of the sand itself, like they'd been buried there waiting. Nick's breath caught. "They're not coming from the dam anymore," he said. "They're everywhere." The camp descended into chaos. The survivors fought in every direction, the world reduced to red dust and screaming. James swung the mounted gun in a wide arc, cutting down dozens at a time. And just when it seemed they'd be overrun, a sudden blast erupted behind the horde. The ground shook and fire rose into the night. Another convoy appeared from the west, armored trucks, headlights cutting through the chaos. A voice echoed through a loudspeaker. "This is the Phoenix outpost." "Hold your ground!" Mara looked to Nick, eyes wide. "You brought the fire with you," she said. Nick wiped blood from his face, raising his weapon again. "Then let's burn them all." The desert burned that night, fire and gunfire blending into one endless scream. Ashes and Phoenix dawn broke over a sea of smoke. The desert battlefield was quiet now, except for the crackle of dying fires and the low hum of the wind dragging sand over the fallen. The sun rose red, heavy with dust and blood. Nick sat on the hood of the pickup, staring out at what was left of the camp. Half the barricade was gone, ripped apart. The smell of death was thick enough to taste. Ghost lay beside him, one paw bandaged, eyes half closed but still alert. Rich approached, dragging a corpse off what used to be the watchtower. "We lost a lot of them," he muttered. "But hell, we're still breathing." James walked up next, armor dented, face streaked with soot. "Phoenix outpost," he said, shaking his head. "Didn't expect to hear that name again." Nick glanced over. "You know them?" "Used to," James replied. "They were a federal response unit in the early days, set up across state lines. When DC fell, they went rogue, turned into something else. Something heavy rolled across the sand behind them, an armored truck painted matte black, the word Phoenix spray painted across the side. The back door swung open and soldiers climbed out, all wearing scavenged gear. The leader stepped forward, a tall man with a scar running from his temple down to his jaw. "We picked up your signal," he said. Didn't think anyone was still alive this far west. Mara approached him, rifle slung across her shoulder. "You're late," she said flatly. "Half my people are dead." The man's eyes swept across the carnage. "You held the line," he said. "That's more than most." Nick stood, tension tight in his chest. "You came from where?" "South," the man replied, "near Yuma. We've been clearing zones, rebuilding, pulling survivors into the network." "Network?" Rich asked. "Like radio chatter?" "Like cities," the man said. "Phoenix, Tucson, maybe even Albuquerque. We're taking back what's ours." For a moment, no one spoke. The idea of rebuilding felt unreal, like a cruel joke in a world built on ashes. Mara looked at Nick. "You think they're for real?" Nick looked at the survivors, the burned horizon, the bodies. "If they're not," he said quietly, "we'll find out soon enough." The Phoenix soldiers started collecting the wounded, their trucks lined up in a row. One of them handed Nick a radio with a faint grin. "If you're heading east, tune to Channel 7, you'll find us." Nick looked at it for a long time, then he pocketed it. The convoy rolled out again, engines rumbling through the dunes. The survivors followed, scarred, silent, but alive. As they drove into the sunrise, Nick glanced once more at the smoke curling behind them. Maybe the world really could rise again, or maybe, like every other flame before it, Phoenix was just another fire waiting to die. Welcome to Phoenix. The road to the outpost cut through scorched desert, past rusted signs and skeleton towns where the wind howled through hollow windows. By the time the convoy reached the walls of Phoenix, the sun was a molten disk sinking into the dust. The outpost wasn't just a camp. It was a city reborn from bones. Massive shipping containers formed barricades around the perimeter, topped with razor wire and floodlights. Watchtowers made from old cranes overlooked every corner. Inside, survivors moved with military precision. Lines of people carrying crates, tending crops under jury-rigged solar lights, cleaning weapons that had seen too many battles. Nick parked the truck as a gate clanged open. The scarred leader from the desert stepped out of his armored vehicle. "Welcome to Phoenix," he said. "Last place on Earth that still remembers what order looks like." Rich gave a low whistle. "Yeah, looks like a prison with better lighting." The man smiled thinly. "Call it whatever you want." But the walls hold. Inside, they were led through a corridor of steel and sandbags into the heart of the camp, a command center made from an old airport hangar. The hum of generators filled the air. Maps covered the walls, showing territories marked with red X's. James studied one of the maps. "You've taken this much ground back?" The leader, Commander Hale, nodded. "Bit by bit, we clear zones, build outposts, reconnect power. We've got engineers, medics, scavengers. Civilization doesn't die unless we let it." Mara crossed her arms. "And what do you want from us?" Hale looked at her, then at Nick. "You fought well. You survived Hoover Dam. That means you're useful. We can use people like you." Nick frowned. "Use us for what?" Hale motioned toward the map again. "Vegas. We're going to reclaim it." The room fell silent. Even Ghost gave a low growl. Rich scoffed. "You mean that radioactive corpse of a city full of infected freaks?" "You're insane." "Insane," Hale said calmly, "is waiting to die when we could rebuild." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You've seen it. The dead are evolving. They move in packs now, they think. If we don't strike soon, it's over. Phoenix is the line between life and extinction." Nick met his stare. "And if we say no?" Hale's smile faded. "Then you don't stay inside these walls." Guards shifted behind him, subtle, but the message was clear. Nick exhaled slowly, glancing at Rich and James. They'd fought too long to die outside another man's gates. "Fine," he said. "But if we go back into Vegas, we do it our way." Hale nodded once, agreed. "You leave at dawn." The group exchanged uneasy looks as they were led to the barracks. The outpost buzzed with life, but underneath it all was something colder. An order built on fear. As Nick lay awake that night, listening to distant gunfire echo through the desert, one thought burned through his mind. Maybe Phoenix wasn't salvation after all. Maybe it was just another kind of apocalypse. The sun fell behind the walls of Phoenix, but no one slept easy. The smell of smoke still lingered, the echoes of gunfire still clinging to memory. Behind those fortified walls, order had a price, and the cost was freedom. Tomorrow, they marched back into the ruins of Vegas. But out here, every promise of safety hides a lie. Because in the zombie chronicles, no safe haven ever lasts.